What on earth are you doing now, Daddy?
In this video, I'm going to be turning this large ash log into a live edge bowl. I'll start off by contemplating the log. I'm turning it round and analysing it and working out which side I want to be the top and which side is going to be the bottom, taking into account there's some nasty chainsaw nicks in this and some of the bark is lifting. I'm marking out where my faceplate's going to be, and then it's over to the drill press just to get that nice level surface for the faceplate. There's going to be a lot of stress on this, so I want a good fixing point for the faceplate. And just a few pushes with the drill press creates enough level surface. Just tidying it up now with a wood carving gouge, just so the faceplate sits nice. And I've got 8 stainless steel screws, good quality ones, for holding this, because I don't want to take any chances. There it is on the lathe, but as you can see the corners are hitting the bed, so I've taken the corners off on the bandsaw. Now we're ready to turn. Using a hefty bowl gouge here, a 1/2 inch bowl gouge, very sharp, and I'm just taking that corner off, starting to bring it to round. But with any project like this, it's very thumpy, you know. It's you have to really push down on the tool rest to avoid the tool bouncing and juddering, and hold the tool at the end of the handle so you've got maximum leverage. I'm just cleaning up the base here. In these initial stages where you're removing the sort of corner, the gap between the tool rest and the workpiece will increase rapidly, so make sure you keep stopping the lathe and moving the tool rest up to the workpiece. You want to get that tool rest as close as possible so that you maximise your leverage effect. You can see the ash grain appearing here, that typical ash grain. It's beginning to take shape. Doing mainly push cuts, working my way round. You'll want to try and avoid any tear out, and especially important on a piece like this where you've got a lot of end grain. You're working a lot of end grain, very little side grain, and it's, you know, across the bottom there that's side grain, but a lot of it is end grain. It was sort of semi-dry, this wood. It wasn't, you know, freshly cut wet, but there was quite a bit of moisture, particularly in the middle. I'm working from the other end now because I'm trying to keep the bark on. So just by doing a few passes in the other direction, it helps you sort of pushing towards the bark rather than knocking it off with the gouge. I'll do the finishing cuts on the top of the bowl, obviously, once it's turned round, but I'm getting the basic shape here. Going back to the more conventional direction. You can see the ghosting here, where you're partly turning air. It's got very high wings on the side of this bowl, so you have to really be careful with your tool control. Yeah, keep plenty of downward pressure on the tool rest, otherwise it will bounce about a lot and you'll end up with very uneven cuts. Make sure your body's in a good position. Just going from the other end again, and there you can see all that end grain. Just a few more passes here. I'm trying to get rid of some deep chainsaw nicks and a couple of holes in the bark, which would spoil the appearance of the finished piece. So I ended up cutting away a lot more than I was originally intending. Here I'm just finalising the shape of the lower half of the bowl. Getting some nice clean cuts here, ready for finishing. As I said, nice sharp tools, many trips to the sharpening station just to keep that razor sharp. And here I'm just doing a final cut across the base. I'm trying to get the correct diameter on the base for a mortise for the larger chuck jaws, and still have enough meat around the chuck jaws to provide strength. Just marked it out with my dividers, and now using the parting tool to define it, back to a bowl gouge just to hog out the middle. And a few push cuts across the bottom. I'm not too worried about how neat this is, because I will be refinishing. Using the Skew as a scraper to create a dovetail, and then a little bit of sanding just on that lower edge. Then it's off with the faceplate, on with the easy chuck, and here I'm just setting my depth gauge so that rod is level with the front of the chuck jaws when it's pushed up against the headstock. And here we are, it's turned round, chuck jaws expanded into the recess or mortise, and then a bit of power sanding, a bit of spot sanding here, hand rotating it, and I'm happy with that. Then we can start hollowing. Using a 1/2 inch bowl gouge again. You can see I've got my helmet on, my respirator, powered one. It's the JSP power cap. Just defining the rim here. And here, of course, you've got to have a bit of slow-mo. You don't get quite such long ribbons, because part of the time you're turning air with a piece like this because of the high wings. Just hollowing out, and then to do the bottom of the bowl I'm using a different grind, more traditional grind, 60 degrees. That makes it a lot easier to chase across the bottom of the deep bowls. There we go, pushing that rod up against the bottom to check the depth. And then it's sanding time, and boy was there a lot of sanding. Vacuum chuck. There we go. We're gently turning away that recess just to give it a more professional finish. Very light, gentle cuts. You know, these vacuum chucks are brilliant, but you don't want to overstress stress them. And then my brand, and then some Tung Oil, which is food safe. I did 2 or 3 coats of Tung Oil in the end. Well, here it is, the finished bowl. The Pac-Man bowl. There, ash, almost full thickness turning. You know, you've got the pith there, right in the centre with the growth rings on both ends. I was aiming to keep this a bit bigger, you know, more of a boat shape, to use more of the log, but there were a couple of deep chainsaw nicks in the log, and I had to get rid of those. They're rather unsightly, and there was also a couple of bits where the bark was bubbling, and I had to turn those out as well. But I'm still pleased with the sort of ball shape of it, and it's an unusual design. Make a great fruit bowl, because you know, you can stack the fruit up and see what's in the bowl quite nicely. Yeah, really pleased with that. Beautiful grain, and I've put Tung Oil on this, which is food safe, pure Tung Oil. So I'll put a couple more coats on this yet. But this was a challenging turn. It's a hefty piece of wood. Needed hefty tools. I did the whole thing in traditional tools. You know, I used carbides and traditional tools, but I used traditional tools for the whole project. And it needed to be done in one hit because it was quite wet in the middle. I'd had the log about 4 years, but it's a big old log, and the ends were sealed with wax, so it was still quite wet. And I wrapped it up once I'd, you know, cut the corners off on the bandsaw, because I couldn't start turning that day. But even then there was radial cracks appearing. There were already a couple to start with, but once you start shaping and hollowing, really you have to do it in one hit with something like this. Even wrapping it up, if you come back, you know, to do it overnight, come back the next day, they can often be very cracked or very distorted. So when you start trying to run it on the lathe again, it'll all be a bit wonky donkey. But yeah, so it had to be done in one go. They're quite tiring turning big things like this. You have to grip hard, hold on tight, to avoid bounce and chatter and things. So yeah, there it is. Really pleased with that. I used the vacuum chuck to finish off the bottom, which I've turned away the recess. I've put my logo on there. Yeah, just came out exactly as I wanted it. I think I will call it the Pac-Man bowl. It's a sort of follow-up to the shorter video I did. Sorry if I upset a few people, no commentary. But I did a shorter video earlier in the week with this little cherry live edge bowl. And this was hard. I haven't got the pith in this, almost the pith. You can see the concentric growth rings there on both ends. But this is sort of half the trunk. The tree is growing up, and that would be the trunk of the tree. Same with that. You know, you've got the growth rings, top and bottom, so that's the trunk of the tree. There we are. But, yeah, this was a much easier project. It only took me an hour to turn this, whereas this one was an all-day job really. I did have a quick break for lunch and wrapped it up while I went in. One of the problems turning a piece like this is that there's an awful lot of end grain. All of this is end grain, all of this is end grain, and all inside these wings is end grain. So that, coupled with the fact that you've got these big high wings, it makes finishing very difficult. I got a very good finish straight off the gouge on these. I was really pleased, but they still need a bit of sanding, and sanding end grain is hard work, as you know. The outside's not too much of a problem, but the inside, especially as this is undercut, because I've had to take it in so the wall is even thickness all the way round, because that stops it distorting and cracking quite so much if you can keep the wall thickness even. And fairly thin, this is about 1/2 inch thickness, perhaps a fraction over 1/2 inch. But finishing the inside, I couldn't get my usual power sander in here. My little tiny rechargeable drill just about fitted in, but not for the whole thing, and so I did an awful lot of hand sanding, and hand sanding end grain, it took forever. I probably spent as long sanding it as I did turning it really, just to get a nice finish on the inside. The bottom's easy, that's side grain, and that's very simple to finish, but any little tool marks on the end grain take quite a bit of finishing. But there we are, another project done. I'll put a turntable shot up in a minute and some stills. I'm thinking about doing a live Q&A on my YouTube channel, but I need to suss out how you do that. I'm not very technical. I need to speak to a couple of people and see how I go about doing that. Is that something that would interest you? Let me know. I'm also, you know, would you like a workshop tour once I've tidied it up? Not sure. And I might do some knife making. I did a knife about 3 years ago. I could do another one. I've got some nice blades and wood for the handle and things, so if that's something that would interest you as well. Anyway, let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Many thanks to all my subscribers. Please stay safe everyone in these difficult times, and I'll be back soon with some more videos. Here's the turntable shot I promised, and you can see very clearly here the direction of the grain and it's a good demonstration of the orientation of a bowl blank, really, in relation to the trunk of the tree. You know, you can see the centre of the tree trunk there on both ends, and the grain running across the bowl. Nice demonstration of ash grain as well. And there's a few stills. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up, that's a great help to me. And please subscribe if you haven't already, it costs nothing to subscribe. And many thanks to all my subscribers. And I'll be back soon with some more videos. And let me know in the comments if there's anything you'd particularly like to see. I think we've got another 3 weeks of lockdown, so I've got a bit of time if I've got the materials. Bye for now.
Please like, share and subscribe. My daddy needs all the help he can get. More rubbish coming soon.